Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a podcast dedicated to helping you as the owner of an accounting firm, in fact, have the premier accounting business in your area, offering quality accounting services and getting paid what you're worth. It's in this podcast that we choose to discuss various topics that will actually help you be the leader you need to be and also address those things that you may be facing as you're running your company, such as marketing, sales, onboarding clients, retaining clients, offering quality services, but also things that may be related to mindset and so forth. It's with that I invite you to listen and hear what the experts have to say. As your host, I'm Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and I've been doing this for more than 20 years, helping accounting professionals both start and build their accounting businesses. It's in that effort that we focus on three key things as to the quality services you should consider providing: bookkeeping and accounting, tax planning and preparation, and CFO and advisory services. Now, today we have an amazing guest, someone that I'm sure you're going to enjoy listening to as we discuss a variety of topics, but it's Andy Cristin. He is a finance director, CFO, with over 30 years experience in a broad range of commercial organizations based in the UK, Europe, and the Middle East. He qualified as an accountant while working for a major UK food distributor, moved to a European vehicle logistics business, and then to a privately held business in the technology sector. Now, during his career, he's worked for 11 different startups, 3 of which grew from nothing to become multi-million-dollar turnover businesses. As well as being an advisor, Andy has been in business himself, co-founding a B2B service business with a serial entrepreneur. They grew the business from $0 to $1 million profit with 0 to 50 employees in less than 5 years. The company was built with a sell in mind, and they achieved an average profit multiple in a trade sale to a French multinational company. Now, Andy is the author of Profit Mindset, which is an Amazon #1 bestseller and was shortlisted for the Business Book Awards. The book is designed to help business owners improve their finance side of their business. He is also a regular contributor to various business-related publications. Outside of work, Andy lives in Chelmsford, UK, with his wife and 2 university-aged children. He is a keen sports fan, lifelong Liverpool supporter, and a regular spectator at Lord's and Wimbledon. So, Andy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Roger. Thanks for inviting me.
This is going to be quite fun. So I'm first of all interested in your journey into becoming an accounting professional. Why the profession? Give us a little bit of a backstory there.
Yeah, okay. So I sort of first became aware of accountants when my father was working with lawyers and accountants, and these professionals that were sort of advising him. He was an insurance official. He ran some agencies overseas. And then when I was at school, I had a job in a petrol station, a gas station, as you'd call it. Mm-hmm. And I sort of noticed that the account holders that you'd fill up the cars for, the ones that had the nice Porsches and the Jaguars and the Mercs, and even one Rolls Royce, they all seemed to be accountants. And so that got my interest. And I was good at maths at school, and just sort of fell into it that way, really. I was always interested in business, and I suppose the two things together, maths and business, it's accountancy.
Well, your love for numbers have obviously paid off because you established Pareto Financial Direction, and you've been working with business owners to help them understand their numbers and plan ahead and grow valuable businesses. So I'm curious, you got into accounting, but that's one thing. It's another thing to start a business, such as you established Pareto Financial Direction. Why start a business?
Yeah. Well, I'd worked for a very large company, the food wholesaler that you mentioned earlier. And the last role I did there was a government tender. It's big, sort of $150 million business. And we tendered for it. Nobody thought we'd get it within the business, but we did. We won it. And then we had to sort of build this business from scratch. And that was great experience, building a business from nothing. Mm-hmm. I put that on my CV. And then, of course, I got a number of other jobs very similar. So I had a lot of experience early on of starting businesses. And then I worked for some smaller companies, some owner-managed businesses, and realized that they didn't really have very good accounting, compared to the large businesses where there was planning functions and management accounts functions, and things were managed well, planned ahead. Even sort of a multi-million-dollar private business had really sort of basic planning or no planning, and made decisions on the hoof. So I sort of realised there was a bit of an opportunity to help out such businesses, and I think you call them fractional CFOs, don't you, in America? Sort of part-time finance director is what we call it.
That is a common term, yes.
Yeah. Well, I went for a job, and it was somebody who was doing a CFO job as part-time, and the business had grown, and he wanted someone to take it on full-time. And I realised sort of halfway through the interview, I didn't really want the job. What I wanted was what the bloke on the other end of the table was doing. So, about 5 years later, I got myself in a position where I could set up and set my business up. Pareto was started in about 2008, I think.
So I'm curious, accounting obviously is what you were doing. How would you define the difference between accounting and the role of a CFO, or even better said, this fractional CFO as you were describing it?
Yeah, I mean, accounting was probably what I did for the first five, maybe 8 years of my career. But then I was a financial controller and then a finance director, and I sort of moved away from historical transaction work and into planning and strategy and forecasting and pricing and, the more interesting elements. And yeah, I suppose that's all I really did then for the last few years working for big companies, and sort of got a bit frustrated that when I started working in the smaller companies, they weren't really interested in that, and they wanted me to post journals and do the payroll, which wasn't of any interest to me whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, the difference I would describe the two as being is accounting, you're definitely more focused on recording and taking care of the financial reports, preparing that historical information, where when you get into that CFO advisory role, you actually, as that fractional CFO, start focusing more on the budget, the forecast, the different changes or modifications that can be made within the business to actually impact the bottom line. You're dealing with pricing strategies, you're dealing with receivables processes, you're basically getting into the intricate intertwining business decisions that are going on within the company. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good description. I mean, the accounting and the bookkeeping is really important, and you can't do the CFO bit without it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sort of a different skill set. It's, things balance when you're doing the accounting. You've got a system and it sort of works, whereas often the CFO bit is less certain. You've got to make assumptions, you've got to look forward, you've got to do scenario, plan different scenarios. You use your experience to try and get better decision making.
So I'm curious, this transition into now starting to be involved with more of the advisory work, the CFO work that we're discussing, how did that lead to then you writing the book, The Profit Mindset?
So I wrote the book for a number of reasons, I suppose. I mean, it's a marketing tool, as I'm sure you're aware. You've got books at Universal, haven't you?
We do.
But it's a great method of actually sitting down and going through the methodology that you're using informally and thinking about how it should work and what the chronology is, and recording it for your own good. But also, you can give the book to someone in an hour and a half or something. It's not a big book, my book. A business owner could read it and I'm sure take on board a few bits of advice that they wouldn't otherwise get, and really make a difference to their business. Something as simple as having a mentor. It's one thing I talk about towards the end of my book. Having someone that you can sit down with once a month and just go through your plan, where you are next to your plan. Are you achieving your revenues, your profit? And if not, why not? It's something that most small business owners don't do. They've got no one to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite simple. I know it's quite simple. It's not difficult to find somebody who you can talk to, because surprisingly enough, they don't have to be an expert in your business, and they won't be. It's just being able to talk to somebody about your problems, and you find solutions yourself. I think that's what most business owners find. The answers are in their head somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The difficulty is getting them out.
I like how you said that. It's the difficulty getting them out because it comes from asking the right questions. One of the things that I've always stressed in the advisory role is that the great coach, the business coach, stems from the quality of the questions that they're asking, because I agree with you. The answers more often than not are in the minds of the business owner. They're the expert. We just need to be asking and posing questions that they may not have already considered for them to kind of talk things through. And I think we've all experienced it when you just start to speak and articulate yourself. What was confusing in your mind starts to make sense as you're explaining it to someone else. And typically you'll answer your own question. You'll have that epiphany and realize, especially as the business owner, I know what I need to do next. And so I think as that business coach or advisor, you can be a very integral part in that process to draw that business owner through that experience to that conclusion. I'm curious, the book, The Profit Mindset, the idea of profit, that very much intrigues me. We talk a lot about profit first, being deliberate, intentional. We talk about profit being something that is a priority in the business. With your book, The Profit Mindset, what do you think the key as a mindset is to having profit in the business? Is there like something they need to be mindful of?
Yeah, I think where that came from really was that I'd seen a lot of people chasing revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Revenue is a nice, easy number to measure, or relatively compared to measuring profit, perhaps. And people looking to grow their business and often sort of going off on a tangent. Someone who might have a great IT consultancy business then thinks, it's a good idea to go off on a tangent and do something that's a bit different. Perhaps they got some of the same clients, but they could, if they get a few more people and a bit more kit, they could sell this other service, and it just dilutes things. And what tends to happen is they don't make a very good profit on the new product, and because they're focusing on that, the original product starts to be a problem as well. So it was more a question of trying to get smaller businesses to think, find a niche, be good at something, and get an above average profit. That's how I see a lot of the clients that I've worked with, the successful ones. That's what they do. They do something in a very narrow band that they're good at. They know inside out. Their competition can't touch them, or most of their competition can't touch them, and that leads to better pricing and better cash flow, and your staff knowing what to do as well.
Well, when you said just a moment ago the emphasis on revenue, I heard a phrase years ago that really resonated with me, and it was this statement that the emphasis on revenue, that's vanity. Vanity is the revenue side, and then it's profit where we find sanity. So if we're focusing on the revenue, that's great. If a business isn't growing, it's dying type of philosophy, but revenue is vanity. And we can talk about revenue and how we're growing and how we're bigger than we were last year. But many of us realize that you can have a good deal of growth on the revenue side and actually see a decrease in the profit side if we're not paying attention to a lot of the associated expenses. And so growth in revenue doesn't always equate to equal growth in profit. So the profit emphasis, managing the expenses, the cost of goods, just being more attentive to those things can literally give us sanity in the profits that we derive. And so that mindset that you're kind of alluding to with your book, The Profit Mindset, I think is a helpful, important element to that. Here's the next question I wanted to ask. The book, you wrote it, but if I were to have you work with a client and have you as a fractional CFO kind of do an engagement, let's say, with them, what's the value that your clients are getting out of what you're teaching and your philosophy, what you're doing with them?
Yeah, I think that's focused on. I mean, there's a 4-step process in this book, and you'd have to follow it exactly chronologically, but it's about understanding your numbers, honing in on the profit, figuring out what's profitable. A number of businesses I've worked with have actually sort of reduced their revenue and increased the profit. There are elements of what they're doing, what they've grown into that don't make a profit. So being more focused and then planning ahead on that, that niche that the business is good at, it can make profits with. Focus on that, plan to grow in that direction. So sort of finally to have some sort of accountability with someone like a fractional CFO or the accountant in any business can be great as a mentor. We were talking a minute ago about just somebody to talk to outside the business. Even if you don't know much about the business, that can be great because the owner's got to talk to you about it. He's got to simplify it. Got to really sort of look at it as a big picture rather than getting lost in the weeds. And that can be a great process for the business owner. When they rise above and look at it, big picture, looking at the forest, not the trees, they see some solutions. And I think people listening to this program, any of them could do that. They know these businesses, they know their clients well enough to have that sort of conversation. It's really important.
Yeah, the way I've described it is if you can bring a childlike curiosity to the business and be willing to just ask some of those probing questions of why, you'll find that the business owner does, like you just described, they have to simplify what's happening to explain it in a way that we can understand. And it's in that process that they may realize maybe they're making things a little bit too difficult or bigger than they need to be. But it's through that curiosity that we really get to find out more about our own clients. And in the end, we may be asking the right questions that really could help turn some things around that the business is facing. So you made the transition from accountant into this CFO space, being an advisor. What advice would you give to someone who wants to actually move as well into doing more than just the accounting, bookkeeping, tax, the compliance type work, and getting into this CFO advisory type role and relationship with their clients?
Yeah, I'd say do it. It might seem out of some people's comfort zone, perhaps, but there's plenty of good books about that you can read to understand. Something like the E-Myth as an example. There's some great advice in there that you could give to your clients, and you don't have to be that great. If you think about the average business, the CFO at the moment is either the business owner themselves, who's got no qualifications in accounting and no experience probably either, and have just sort of learned by their wits, the experiences they've had building the business as far as they've gone. Or there's nobody, nobody's really doing the CFO role. So anyone who's involved in the compliance has an understanding of their client, and can probably see things, that could be improved. Sit down and have a conversation with them. Bit of planning ahead is like cash flow planning, profit forecasting, margin analysis. Those sort of things, relatively straightforward for an accountant to do. But most small businesses just don't have that expertise in-house, and they're not doing it.
You mentioned cash flow. I agree. There's a very common thread with a lot of the businesses I interact with, and there is typically a cash flow issue that they're facing. And so there's a lot of opportunities as accounting professionals to step in and actually help them address some of these cash flow needs, especially when it's related to what they're doing on the receivables end to manage the monies that are owed them and keep that top of mind with the customers so that they're actually getting paid. But there's a lot of work that can be done on that side. And then when you take it to the other end of payables, how the company is actually choosing to prioritize what gets paid, when it gets paid, and negotiating the terms of whatever they're paying. There's a lot that can be done to really impact the bottom line with a percent margin change here, another percent margin change here. All of a sudden, you can really impact the business model in such a way that they're far more cash let's say, flush with cash and be profitable. The other thing that I thought was helpful is you were pointing out that the accounting professional is in an ideal position to step into that role of advisory because they're so intimately aware of the business and the numbers that make up the company. And to that, I wanted to say that we've all heard within the profession that accounting is the language of business. Well, if the business owner can't understand the financials like us, we're then the ones that the business is speaking to because we're the only ones that are able to read and understand those numbers. And so we're the ones that become, in my term, a translator. We're the interpreter for the business. And as we're trying to help communicate this information that we're bringing to the business owner through accounting, they're going to see value in what we're telling the business owner the company is saying. It's screaming this information. And we have that unique perspective to bring into the business owner this information so that they can make more informed business decisions using the numbers we're providing. And now, because of our experience, our background, our perspective, we can more easily step into that role of advisor simply because we have all these insights that we can draw from. That is obviously a mouthful, but let me ask you, what are some fun or exciting experiences you've had now working with clients in this CFO capacity?
Let me just one thing I was going to say there, that picking up on what you were asking about,
Sure.
Providing help on cash flow, for example. I mean, one thing you can do if you've got a practice and you've got lots of different clients, you will see some that are doing really well with cash and some that aren't. So it's not too difficult to have a look at what the successful ones are doing, and sort of roll that sort of confidentially. Advise other clients to do the same sort of things. For example, asking for a deposit up front. Some businesses have done, or moving to a subscription model for certain parts of the business.
Yeah.
We're in a great position to see that sort of thing and help people to use best practice.
So what I'm hearing you describe there is these different revenue streams. You've got different strategies that you see businesses implementing, such as the subscription model that allows the business to get a recurring revenue. And now they actually are increasing the valuation of the business because they have this constant stream of money that's coming in rather than having to each month go out and forge new business and new sales. Yeah, you're really, as an accounting professional, bringing in these excellent ahas that you're observing from other businesses, other industries, and helping maybe adapt or at least suggest adaptations to that other client that you're now working with. Let me go back to that advisory question. Do you have some story that you have of working with a business as to a pivot that they made or an aha that they experienced with your help?
Yeah, I mean, for example, a firm of architects. I don't know how much you know about architecture, but there are various different sort of areas, and like a lot of industries, I suppose, some are more profitable than others. So, for example, building new homes in green fields is a lot less profitable than, let's say, retirement living, which is quite a growth area at the moment, of course, because average age of people is getting higher. So breaking down and looking at their business and saying, look, okay, overall you made, let's say, for example, 10% profit. But you did a lot of work on these new build houses, and that was only worth 5%. Whereas on your retirement living, you made 20. And it's not, if they're recording the right information, and they were recording, the hours and the revenue for on their systems, you can dig in and find that sort of insight. But of course, if nobody's looking, they're not going to find it. So yeah, that was a bit of a pivot, looking away from one type of business and at another one where they had a lot of experience and trying to expand that. Yeah, that was an eye opener. They loved that.
That's really good. So you've got your company called Pareto Financial Direction. I'm kind of curious, why did you call it that? What's the meaning behind the name?
Yeah, so there's a guy called Vilfredo Pareto who was an economist, an Italian economist at the end of the 19th century, I think, and he's sort of acknowledged as the person who did some research which other people then worked on it and came to the 80-20 rule. So 80% of your profit comes from 20% of your transactions, or 20% of your clients, or whatever.
Yeah, the Pareto principle.
Yeah, the Pareto principle, Pareto law, whatever you call it. So I sort of see that as pivotal, as an important part of my work, and I always sort of look at things in that way. But at the same time, I'm not doing a full-time role. I may be spending 20% of my time with each client. And so the argument was that they were getting 80% of the benefit of a full-time CFO and only paying for 20%. So slightly tongue-in-cheek.
Yep. No, I like that. That's really good. I'm curious, as you work with these business owners, tell us what's a tip or advice that you find that you're giving to most of those that you work with that really does help them as you begin your engagement?
Yeah, I mean, what one good one would be put your prices up, and that probably goes for everybody who's listening to the podcast as well. I think a lot of businesses underprice. Had a classic situation once where a client put quite a lot of effort into a pricing proposal and put it in front of their client. And they gave them two options. There was like a variable option and a fixed option. And the client liked the proposal, and they accepted. And they didn't realise, but they actually accepted to pay both. They thought it was a fixed element and a variable element. So my client actually got twice the revenue they expected for that job. Now they'd have never have got that if they'd have thought of it. They could have sat around a table for weeks and thought, how much is the most we can get for this job? They'd have never got to that number. Mm-hmm. Just proves that whatever they were doing, I know what they were doing, but what they were doing was valuable enough to their client that it was worth twice what they thought it was.
This whole idea of pricing, I'll have to agree with you. There's two things that I'll usually discuss with the client. One is, help me understand how you came to the price point that you did. Is it just some arbitrary number that you just came up with? Did you do some price shopping that you actually compared your pricing to other competitors and came up with some value there? Was it based on your cost of goods and just a markup of some sort? And as you have costs increased, you then proportionally increase your pricing just as those occur? Can you explain to me how you came to the pricing that you've developed? And then the second question, when was the last time you did a price change? And arguably, most of the time, it's always going to be up. But it's basically just asking that question. You'll come to find out that there's businesses that haven't done a price change in months, years, many years. And it's just kind of interesting to find out, when was that last price increase? Now, some are very on top of things, and they'll say, annually they assess this, or as things change with their suppliers, they'll change and adjust their pricing. Literally, this week, one of the clients that I'm working with, it was on Monday, they received notification of a price increase. They were told last week that the price change was coming, and they've seen in the industry this happening, but they received from their supplier increases that ranged from as little as 15%, averaging between 25 to 35%, and as high as 40% markup on the materials that they actually use for the work that they do. And if you can imagine, that's a huge, substantial increase. And it's not something that the company is able to absorb and just kind of take in. They naturally have to then adjust all of their pricing, all the bidding that they're doing to reflect this. And it's not something that they can wait to do. It's literally gobbled up all of their profit margin, and they have to immediately look at what they're doing. Maybe even some recent bids that they've given have to be changed. I mean, it's substantial, but it's to your point. It's starting with that question of pricing. So I'm glad you brought that up. Here's another question. The work that we're doing obviously involves advisory and so forth, and it kind of tiptoes into the realm of mentoring and coaching. I'm wondering, have you worked with a coach yourself for your own business? And If so, who did you work with, and what was it that you learned from that coaching relationship that you had?
Yeah. I've worked with a couple. One's a guy called Andrew Priestley in the UK, um, and he did, I suppose, what I do a bit with my clients, and sort of, you know, he didn't understand the nuts and bolts of what I do, but he understands people who work in a sort of a consulting type business. And yeah, sat back, asked some good questions, and I answered my own my own problems
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
a lot of the time. Yeah, but he also, he had some good examples of things like pricing, for example. From his experience, which were useful to hear. But yeah, it's a good discipline. I think it's sort of once a month, sitting down for an hour and 90 minutes, um, having a bit of homework. Something that I'm supposed to do between the two sessions, and coming back on that, and just keeping me on track and keeping me honest, I suppose, really, because
Yeah.
otherwise, if you're on your own, it's easy not to. You know, it's easy for a month to go by, and you've done a lot of day-to-day work, technical work, but you haven't taken your business forward. And
Exactly.
I think
Yeah,
he was very good for that.
I think as business owners, what we're prone to is justification. We're easily able to rationalize things, and from that procrastinate and put things off. And I don't think we allow that with our employees. We don't expect that of anyone else, but somehow we get this pass card typically where we procrastinate or justify. And it's good to have a coach, someone that we're working with that can hold us accountable and keep those things a priority and help them be accomplished or move forward in a more timely manner. So working with a coach myself, I find that I get things done and I get them done quicker simply because I'm being held accountable for them. So I can identify with what you're saying there. Here's another question. As a business owner, you're running your own company. Share with us a challenge you faced with your business, whatever that might have been, and what you learned from that experience.
I think the biggest challenge that I've got, I suppose, is probably trying to scale it, because I'm a one man band, really, in terms of delivery. What I'm trying to work on at the moment is trying to produce some programs which at some point somebody else could deliver, sort of based on the book. So the book has put down on paper a system, and I now need to go into more detail, perhaps, and produce it in a way that somebody else could deliver it. That's quite a big challenge.
No, that makes sense. I understand that when you're a solo entrepreneur, you end up facing a lot of challenges where where we are the bottleneck, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you've sort of got the clients, the day-to-day clients that you have to work for to bring the money in, and you're trying to sort of plan for the future and put in place revenue streams that don't involve your time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of two jobs at the same time, isn't it?
It is. It truly is. Now, here's another question. Like you, there's definitely a lot of work that goes into running the business. I'm assuming that you can relate to the idea of being a workaholic. I'm just kind of curious, what do you do to kind of balance your professional life with your personal life? You're an avid fan of soccer, football, obviously, and you go to Wimbledon and so forth. I'm curious, how do you balance that personal and professional?
Yeah, my wife would probably say I don't do it very well, actually. I think I did it much better before lockdown and COVID, because I tended to I'd work with a client on their premises for a day, and then the next day I'd be with somebody else. Whereas after COVID, it all gets mixed up, and I'm working from home, and I'm on a Zoom with one client, in the morning, and then before lunch I'm perhaps on another Zoom with somebody else, and then you've got all the actions from those meetings which all sort of build up, and
Mm-hmm.
I found myself I sort of saved maybe 2 hours commuting a day, on a lot of days when I was working, and just used them. Seemed to be doing more work, catching up. So yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, I don't work at the weekends, so yeah, my workaholic issue is probably just sort of the days running into the evenings, really.
Yeah, what I've done is I've tried to take my Fridays and carve them out so that I purposely tried to not schedule things, and inevitably something gets put into my Friday. But regardless, I try to keep those a little bit more open, without meetings, without recurring type of events, just definitely open for the things that come up, let's say. But at the same time, like you mentioned, when I go home, I try not to work. Now, I do go into the office still, so I have that commute, but I enjoy the commute. I make the most of it. And at the end of the day, I try to have that separation between personal and professional. So here's a question. You've got Liverpool with football, you've got Lords, and then you got Wimbledon. So we've got football, we've got cricket, and then we've got tennis. Which do you prefer?
Yeah. I don't know.
Actually, I'll even ask it this way. Which do you prefer to watch and which do you prefer to play? How about that?
Well, unfortunately, I don't play any of them anymore. I played football up until a couple of years ago. I used to love that, once a week, playing with a load of other 40 or 50-year-olds, and we'd have a great laugh. That was good fun, but we haven't really played since COVID, or I certainly haven't. I think I probably prefer the football, to be honest. The soccer, it's a game I played forever, and from when I was sort of 5 or so, and it's the number one sport in the UK, and I watch Liverpool when I can. It's very difficult to get a ticket to actually go and see them live, but they're on television quite a lot. And living near London, I can go and see other games. But in the summer, watching the cricket for a day, I don't know if you understand the experience really, but it's a game I used to play. And it's very English. I think the rules are a bit odd to anybody that doesn't really understand them. But yeah, it's sort of 6 hours of sport, and quite a lot of drinking as well, I'm afraid, as well. But
well, I will say that I much prefer football. It's definitely fun.
Yeah.
We have near here a stadium for the Real team, and Real happens to do very, very well in their league. They've had some phenomenal runs at a national and global level, so that's been wonderful to see. And we'll typically have some very significant games played in our stadium here, so that's something I'm quite pleased with. Definitely can't say I've played cricket, but I've learned it. I've got a neighbor in our area that is someone that is a fan. He was overseas for a number of years, purchased all of the equipment, and so he can get in the good old get up and teach us exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
I can admit I don't understand the game, but I will say that I was fascinated to learn that it can go very, very long. I guess over in India, they had one of the games that went a few days in length. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the test matches that we have over here, there's I don't know, 5 in the summer and 5 in the winter. They're overseas normally. They're a 5-day game.
Yeah.
So it's 6 hours a day, 5 days, and there are shorter forms of the game now. There's one that's probably about 2.5 hours of play. Very quick game, which is quite popular, on a Friday evening or something like that to go and watch. So it's different options, but the purists are only really interested in the 5-day game, and it's fascinating. There've been some for the tests this summer so far that have been really exciting. Twisting and turning. One day one team's up, and another day the other team seems to have come back. And
well, that's obviously a great diversion, and anytime someone's involved or interested in athletics, that's good. So I'm all about that. So here's another question. You said you have 2 children. They're in the university. Have either of them chosen to go into the accounting profession?
No, they both seem quite keen on not going into accounting. I don't know what I've done there, but my son's he's finished his university last week, and he's off. He's for a few weeks. Then he's got a job starting in September in a marketing business, sort of financial. It's a financial consultancy, but on the marketing side. My daughter is just started at university, but she works in a hotel, and she seems to be quite interested in that sort of hospitality
Very good.
sector. So yeah, that seems to be what they're interested in.
So your Audi, Porsche, Jaguar, Rolls-Royce didn't persuade them to pursue the accounting profession.
Yeah, I haven't quite reached that level yet of vehicle. No.
Good. Okay. Now here's the other thing. You've started your own business. You've written a book. What do you hope that your children are taking from your experience as they watch and observe you go down this path, being an entrepreneur, being an author? What do you hope that they're learning from this experience?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that. I think probably when you say it like that, it's probably just that they can do things that turn out, if they can turn their mind to things perhaps they wouldn't have thought of doing. I mean, there's no way even 10 years ago that I'd have thought I'd write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not when I was their age.
Yeah.
I probably did think that I would start a company when I was their age, but I wouldn't have had any idea how to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, perhaps my daughter could buy a hotel, and my son could have a marketing company of his own. Or if that was what would interest them. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I think hopefully they've seen that if you work hard, not too hard, but if you work hard, you get some just desserts.
Well, it definitely is the fruit of the labor. There's definitely a lot of labor, so we're hoping there's going to be some fruit along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got your spouse. She's supported you. What kind of support have you felt as you've gone through this journey of taking risks and starting the business as you have and going out there to work with clients? How has the support of your spouse played into that?
Yeah, I mean it's very important. I think she always believed that it would be a success. So she was happy, but had to have a conversation at one point and say, I'm going to give 3 months' notice, and we won't have an income in 3 months' time. She was happy with it. I think she believed that it would work one way or another. So she went along with it.
Very good. Well, I have to admit that a lot of the people that I've worked with, there's always someone that stands behind them that is supportive and I think even influential in the successes that they experience. I can say the same for me. There's a lot I've done in my life that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't have had the support and the encouragement that I have from my own spouse. So that means a lot to me. And so whenever we can surround ourselves by people who believe in us, that encourage us to be better than perhaps what we even see ourselves being, that's huge. That can really be a game changer for a lot of people, and it has been for me.
Yeah, and also to have a completely different view. I've got the view from the inside of the business, and then quite often, we'll talk about something, and she'll say something, and I'll think, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? And it's just because I'm wrapped up in the day to day. It's a classic thing again, and she's looking at it from a different viewpoint.
Perfect. Well, how would you describe yourself if you were to go introduce yourself to a business owner? You're out networking. How do you take the time in a 30, 60-second commercial to explain what it is you do?
I normally say that I'm an accountant, and I work with, or I'm a qualified accountant, and I work as an advisor to SMEs. I specialise in profit growth, yeah, if I'm talking to an SME owner, that's normally enough for them to start a conversation.
Perfect. That's great. This is maybe a bigger question than it needs to be, but with your business and the work that you're doing, where do you see yourself going in the next, say, 1 to 3 years? What do you think is the big opportunity that exists offering CFO and advisory services? What excites you about the near future?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, it's got to be some sort of scaling. So I think I totted out the other day. I've got something like 60,000 hours experience in accounting, finance, being a CFO. So trying to leverage that in some way. And I'd like to do some sort of group work. So, Zoom has obviously taken off the last couple of years. Some sort of business club, maybe, which is, one to many rather than the work that I've done up till now, which is all one to one.
Yeah.
Small. I could work with smaller businesses then, perhaps, who could just hopefully get some benefit from some tools that we people like us can provide. Cash flow forecasts and profit forecasts and break-even analysis, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's what I like to try and do.
Very good. Well, I will just add to that in the coming years, I'm very excited about the fact that there is a generational change that's happening within business. There are a lot of people that are of the, let's say, the baby boomer era and so forth that are going to be retiring, selling their businesses. I've read a number of things recently that speak with the recession happening in many parts of the world. There's a lot of business owners that went through it, say 10, 20 years ago, and they just don't want to do it again. And so there's a transition happening within companies. And as CFO advisors, we have an opportunity to help position the companies for that exit that they're preparing for, helping them get the most out of their business that they can as they're looking to now retire. But at the same time, I think all these people that are going to be acquiring the businesses and taking over these businesses, they're going to be looking for that direction, insight, help, so that they can more or less manage this transition. And I'm quite excited about the opportunities that present themselves, not only just to offer accounting and tax services, but literally to provide these CFO and advisory type services as well. So lots of opportunity out there. Andy, here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to kind of recap a little bit of what we've been talking about here. But in addition to the recap, I want to come back to you and just get a closing thought and see what it is you have to share that you feel would be a nice conclusion to our discussion today. Before I do the summary, I wanted to just mention that there is in the episode description for all of our listeners an opportunity for you to get a copy of Andy's PDF. It's an ebook that you can actually get a copy of that I would encourage you to go take advantage of getting, simply because of the fact that Andy is sharing with us some important tidbits here that are worth your getting access to. The other is the book Red to Black. We're going to be providing in the episode description the copy of the turnkey business plan that you can use as accounting professionals to actually work with your clients to help them move from being in the red to being in the black. It's literally the how-to guide for accounting professionals to implement with your business clients and help them deal with that challenge that so many business owners face, which is cash flow management. And in that, because of the conversation that we've had today of being a CFO advisor and literally working with our clients as their trusted strategic advisor, I'll put in some information regarding the profit and growth expert, what it is you can do to help your clients prioritize and emphasize both the profit and the growth that needs to take place in their business, and doing so as their advisor. So go there for information regarding these 3 tidbits of information that you can gain access to as the listener of our episode today. Just go to the episode description and you'll have all of the details there for you to take advantage of. The second thing I'd like to do is the summary, as I mentioned. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Andy has really stepped out there with his business Pareto and really addressed, I think, a very common thing that we're all facing. And it's seen that the business owners are very excited and passionate about what they do. But as CFO advisors, we're able to help them really take their business to a whole new level, identifying key performance indicators that they should be watching, doing budgets and forecasts that actually help them manage their cash flow better. It's really stepping into a new role that I believe we can help address. And Andy's done so in his book, The Profit Mindset. And it's that mindset that I think we need to be considering as we work with our business owner clients, just because that mindset can actually be a determining factor of whether or not they're going to, in fact, be profitable. I said earlier that revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. Well, if that's the case, we want to obviously put the emphasis on not are they making a lot of money, but are they actually keeping the money that they work so hard to gain. The other thing that I wanted to mention is Andy did a great job of just kind of helping us realize that as business or as accounting professionals, we have an opportunity to step into this advisory role. He shared the first question or advice that we should be considering with our own clients, which is pricing. What is it that they're doing to raise their price and actually get paid more for what it is they do, whether it be a product or service? And I think that was a great bit of advice, just to simply consider, when are we going to ask our clients that question, and what can we do to help them realize what that pricing ought to be, what their price margins are, what their profit margins are, what their break-even point is. There's a lot that we can do there, and I think this would be a great time for us to consider that as part of the conversations we're having with our clients today. So with that, Andy, what closing thought would you like to actually share?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll go back to saying, just have a go. If you're not providing advisory at the moment, then you should be. So find a way to do it. And yeah, it's interesting what you just said about the baby boomers. I mean, obviously that does give you two opportunities to advise with so many sellers sort of coming onto the market, and obviously buyers and quite likely, I suppose, employees buying businesses off owners who want to get out, who don't have even the experience of setting it up and getting it as far as it's gone. I've got a client that's a bit like that at the moment. They're selling to the employees, and I think there'll be a lot of advice needed there. So, yeah, it's a massive opportunity, and it's interesting work. So, add it to the compliance.
Perfect. So with that being said, let me just kind of wrap things up. Obviously, go to the episode description to get access to some of these free resources that we mentioned. Second, if you've not already considered and are offering advisory services, just like Andy mentioned, do so. Consider it. See what you can do to bundle together a package that would be something you can provide, but also price it such that you're paid very fairly for the time and effort that you're putting in to each of the clients that you're working with. With that being said, as a podcast, if you haven't already, I want to encourage that you subscribe to the podcast. It's the intent of this show to have on each and every week various guests to help us deal with, address, and also consider different things that we can be doing to, in fact, have the premier accounting firm in our area. And it's with that I invite you to listen to the previous episodes, and obviously, as I just mentioned, subscribe. As for the content of this show and other things that you would like to consider, feel free to reach out to us directly. You can contact us at 801-265-3777, or you can find us at universalaccounting.com. And there, get the information you need to consider applying these principles in your business to, in fact, be that premier accounting firm in your area. Now, that being said, I encourage you to listen next week to our episode, and obviously stay safe out there. Why? Because if it's about accounting, it is universal. So enjoy yourselves and have a great week.